Let's talk about the Zerona VZ8. And I know that Dr. Banning talked to you a little bit, but I'm going to go into the background and the science of how this laser works, because it's really important to know how something works if you're going to trust your body and your doctor with it. This is my opinion. But the first thing, like he said, is all of our lasers are actually created in a factory that's outside of Greenville, South Carolina. It's in Fountain Inn. This is our actual factory itself. So if you guys ever find yourself in Fountain Inn, South Carolina, we'd be more than happy to take you through the whole facility and show you how we assemble all of these different types of lasers. It's a veteran-owned, USA-made company. 85% of the pieces and parts of every single one of our lasers is actually made in-house. The other 15% that we can't manufacture ourselves, we actually use only USA-made products. So that's one of the things that we love about the company. It was founded in 1996 by a couple of friends. One of them was a veteran, and he was an engineer. He was a medical engineer. He was actually working on the pulse ox project. You know, the little thing that goes on your finger that measures your oxygen in your pulse? He was working on the team that created the oxygenation part for the pulse ox. His friend's dad was a paratrooper. He had been a paratrooper, and he had a lot of back pain, and he was visiting the local chiropractor for adjustments to help with his back pain. And he came home to his son and his friend one day and said, "I am doing really well. This doctor has this laser that he's putting on my back, and I feel so much incredibly better." Well, the engineer said, "Get it for me. Bring it back. I want to look at it." So he took it, the laser, from the chiropractor who had smuggled it in from Europe somewhere, and he took it apart in his garage. And he said, "I can do better than that." And that is how Erchonia was started in 1996 in a garage. So since the time 1996 is when we started doing research. So that engineer said we have to do FDA studies, not because the people on the ground really care about it, but because the government cares about it. Because when we put something out on the market that says that it is going to help, again, for lasers that reduce pain, or for our lasers that are good for toenail fungus, or for lasers that are cleared for all of the different things that they're cleared for, we want to make sure that we can prove that this works. And so at this point in the world of low-level laser, there are less than 30 FDA clearances for specific purposes. I think there's like 27. We hold more than 23 of those FDA clearances. So Erchonia really is the giant in the world of low-level laser. Those are lasers that are not painful. They have no heat. They're not thermal lasers. They actually work in what are called a photochemical fashion, which means, has anybody heard of photosynthesis before? Okay, so light hits a plant, and the plant has a reaction inside of its cells to create something that happens. That's the way that our lasers work. That's why they're called photochemical. Kind of like you taking an ibuprofen for back pain. Ibuprofen, you're not going to be able to feel it, but there's going to be a chemical reaction inside your body that's going to make a change. Our lasers are going to help make a change inside the body, but without the side effects of something like ibuprofen. And actually, in the last 30 years of studying our lasers, there's never been a single reported side effect to the FDA for any reason, which is a huge margin of safety when you think about all the other things that are out on the market that people use for everything from pain to fat loss, like we're talking about today. So right now we have some ongoing studies. Again, we're going to talk about fat loss and circumference reduction with this particular laser, but Erchonia is currently studying lasers for autism, Alzheimer's, neuropathy. We have one that's coming out for chin fat reduction, lots of exciting different things. But I just put this up to talk about it so that you understand that when we bring a laser to market, we do double-blind, placebo-controlled, randomized multi-site studies, which is the gold standard for doing research here in the US. Any questions on that? Okay, so when we talk about laser, you know, it almost seems like Star Trek to me when I first started out. Like, how could you wave something over someone that they can't feel, that doesn't create any kind of a trauma in their body, but it makes a change? And different types of lasers do different types of things. So all of Erchonia lasers are class 2 lasers. And class 1, 2, 3, and 4 does not talk to the effectiveness about the laser, saying like class 1 is the least effective and class 4 is the most effective. And as a matter of fact, class 1 means it's the safest laser. Class 4 is the least safe laser. It has the most amount of hazard to it. So if you guys have seen anything out in the aesthetics market, like a facial peeling laser or a surgical laser or something that's doing recontouring, anything that has heat to it is called a class 4 laser, okay? All of Erchonia lasers are class 2, which means that they're safe for the skin, they can't burn, they can't cut, and they are safe for the eye. So if you saw the laser, it was on when it was on, it's perfectly fine for you to look down at it when you or if you do a VZ8 session. They would put glasses on you just to have good safety precautions. You would literally have to stick your eyes up underneath it for a long period of time to have an issue with the laser, okay? Any questions about the lasers themselves? Okay, so how the heck did we figure out that these lasers could create fat loss? It was actually an accident. We were studying lasers in the late 90s for pain, and we had a couple of medical doctors who were doing liposuction therapy, and they took this laser, which was our handheld laser, it was one of the precursor lasers, and they would laser their patients for 4 minutes after liposuction um, surgery to see if they could get a difference in the pain reduction. And they got some difference in pain reduction. They said, why don't we do 4 minutes of laser before surgery and 4 minutes of laser after surgery and see if we get any better pain reduction. And lo and behold, they got better pain reduction. But what they found is that it completely changed the way that the fat looked. So I don't know if you guys can see this top picture here. This is without laser. And I don't know if we can bring the lights down at all, but this is very pink and it's clumpy. If you've ever seen chicken fat under the skin and it looks clumpy, that's what the fat looks like when it comes out of a human body and goes into this little canister to get disposed of. After we had done the laser with it, the fat was yellow and liquefied. Can you guys see the change from here to here? Yeah. So that is what happens with the laser that was what happens with the fat in the body when we put Erchonia lasers on it. These are the doctors that were doing the studies, the doctors in the era, and they studied those handheld lasers in their office with liposuction for a few years. They actually brought their findings to the World Congress of Liposuction in the year 2000. They stood on a stage in front of hundreds of medical doctors, and they said, we have this non-heating, non-cutting, non-bruising, no side effects laser that we just wave it on the skin for just a few minutes, and it's getting us better contouring results than we've ever had before with our patients. And they literally almost got laughed off stage because the doctors were like, how can you prove that's okay, how can you prove that this is what's really happening beyond the pictures? So in the audience that day when these doctors were presenting and they kind of almost got laughed off stage, there were 2 researchers sitting in the audience. One was from the University of Chicago and one was from Singapore. And they both came up to the doctors at the end and they said, we want to use your laser and we want to do microscopic research to see what's going on at the level of the cells to see how your lasers are making this happen. So they each took a laser. And Dr. Wolosewicz at the University of Chicago studied single cells. So this is a fat cell under a scanning electron microscope. And what he found was just with Erchonia lasers, after 3 to 6 minutes, this little pore opens in the cell, and the liquid inside, the fat inside, gets partially liquefied, emulsified, and it seeps out of the cell. The cell drains and shrinks. But the fat cell stays alive and healthy, which is really important, and we're going to talk about that. The pore stays open for 2 to 3 days, and after 2 to 3 days, that pore just closes back again. And I'm going to show you a picture of that happening. So it's kind of like having a garbage can that's been full for a really long time, and you can't take the garbage out, and we suddenly have a way to get the garbage out. Imagine if you had a kitchen garbage that you couldn't dump it out for 10 years. How stinky and how sick would your kitchen be? So we know that our fat cells actually hold on to toxins. All the extra stuff that we take in from our environment, the chemicals, the plastics, all of the things that our body can't process and it can't get rid of, it holds on to in the fat cells. So what we're doing is we're creating a little pore for that to get out of the system. And we'll talk about why that's safe here in a little bit too, if you have that question. On the other side of the world, Dr. Susan Lim did the same thing with her research, but she took clumps of fat cells. And she said, I want to see if it happens the same way if you do a whole bunch of fat cells at once. And lo and behold, she found the same thing, that after 3 to 6 minutes, the pore would open, the fat cell would dump its contents, and the cell it's kind of like going from a big grape to a raisin. And the fat cell would stay alive and healthy. And this, again, is just some pictures. So if you wonder, when you can't feel anything going on, you don't have any pain afterwards, is it doing anything? It's creating that little tunnel that's allowing that fat to come out. So has anybody heard of the keto diet before? Right? You have to do a lot of things to make the fat, your body burn fat for the keto diet. You can do it in 20 minutes with this. Okay? Pretty interesting, right? Okay. So where does the fat go? Everybody's going to say, okay, it opened up. Is it safe? Where does it go? What happens afterwards? Number one, in 30 years of using our lasers for all different purposes, we've never had a single reported side effect to the FDA. So as far as we know, as long as you didn't look up underneath it with your eye for a long period of time, you're going to be completely safe, okay? But when the fat comes out of that fat cell, it's going to go into the spaces right beside the fat cell. They're called the extracellular spaces. And then your body has a system called the lymphatic system that's going to pick that fat up and all of the contents of the inside of the cell, and it's going to carry it to little nodes inside the lymph system. Inside the lymph nodes, you have white blood cells. Your white blood cells are responsible for getting rid of bad stuff, and it's going to eat up that fat. It's going to process it, and your body's going to use that fat for fuel, like we talked about can happen in the keto diet. Anything that your body's unable to use for fuel, it's going to get rid of as waste. So we have something called the Zerona shuffle. Some people who have a Zerona session have to get off and go to the bathroom really fast, because one of the ways we get rid of waste is we can either breathe it out, we can urinate it out, we can defecate it out, or we can sweat it out. So those are some of the things that we see people who, yeah, absolutely. Anybody who wants a picture of this can absolutely have it. We're going to have this whole recording and the information for Dr. Banning as well. So anything that you guys need. So it's actually very, very safe. But as you can imagine, the VZ8, this laser, after you've been on it for 20 minutes, it's done its job. It's opened up the fat cell. It's gotten it where it's going to be. But we want to make sure that you have a normal or a healthy or an optimized even lymphatic system, because your lymphatic system is a little different than some of the other systems in your body. Think about your heart. Your heart has a pump, right? But you don't have to think about it. Your heart's going to pump by itself all the time, whether or not you know what's happening. But the lymphatic system, which gets rid of the foreign debris, it's going to get rid of that excess fat, all of those things, it needs hydration and it needs movement. So you want to think of your lymphatic system as a river. And we all know that a swamp doesn't have a lot of good drainage, right? It's dark and it's green and it's overflowing, and you can think of a swamp being kind of stinky. We want to have a river that has a lot of water in it so it can move that stuff along. So if you're going to do the VZ8 treatments, my suggestion is to make sure that you hydrate well and you move in some way. There's lots and lots of different ways to move the body. And Dr. Banning, do you guys do anything after VZ8 treatments? Okay, perfect. So vibration plate is going to actually move the lymphatics for you. So it's going to be a good start, but that pore is going to stay open for 3 days. So we suggest that you do something for lymphatic movement for at least 3 days after each VZ8 session. You can go for a little walk, you can shovel snow, you can jump on your own vibrator, you can get vibration plate, you can bounce on the side of your bed, and a lot of people will go on 10-minute walks 3 times a day. All right, so let me introduce you now specifically to the VZ8 laser, not just to how it works in general. So the VZ8 laser is the only violet laser that's on the market that's being used for non-invasive body contouring. It's super fast. It's 20-minute treatment times. There's no pain, there's no downtime, and there's no known side effects. So how effective is it? So we had to do FDA studies with the VZ8 laser so that we made sure that it actually did what it said that it was going to do. And the precursor laser to the violet Zerona was the red Zerona. And it got studied more than 6 times. It's been published, the red Zerona is published in more than a dozen publications. We needed to make sure that this one was going to do an even better job, or else why would we make it? So the interesting thing about the violet light is the violet laser light is actually more energetic than red. If you look at a wave on the beach, the red wavelength of light is a little slower than a violet, which is faster and more energetic. So what we expected was that people were going to get better results faster with the Violet Zerona laser. And it's exactly what we found. So in the original study, the Zerona was 20 minutes on the front, 20 minutes on the back. So it was a 40-minute treatment time with our red laser. And the average person got 3.72 inches of fat loss between these three areas, between the waist, the hips, and the thighs. With the Violet Zerona, and I'll take that any day and I'll tell you why and what that equates to, but what we found is that in half the time, the Violet Zerona laser got 3.91 inches of cumulative effective circumference reduction. So what does that mean? So 4 inches of fat loss is equivalent to about 2.7 liters of fat. Has everybody seen a 2-liter bottle of Coke before? And a 1-liter bottle of Coke before? 4 inches of fat loss is equivalent to about 2.7 liters of fat. So that's not saying it's just in one area, but it's over the waist, the hips, and the thighs, okay? So I did, for example, you know, you got to try it out when you're working for them, and I need to do some more sessions, but I did 6 sessions, and I lost 7 inches because I did it once a week for 6 weeks instead of doing the FDA study. We pushed all of the sessions into 2-week time periods. So we did 3 times a week for 2 weeks. And what we have found in some other studies that we've done is that sometimes stretching it out a little bit more is going to give the body more time to process the lymphatic system. So you're going to get better results if you can stretch it out. So I think Dr. Banning does sessions at twice a week. And then they may counsel, depending on the person, it might be once a week. So more is not better because we have 3 days for that pore to stay open. We want to make sure that the fat processes out of the body, because if it doesn't move, if you're dehydrated or you're not going to the bathroom or you're not moving a little bit, you will get some results, but you're not going to get the optimum results that you would get if we get that system optimized. Make sense? Okay. Any questions on that? So this is a 5-pound blob of fat. And so we don't talk about the Zerona being a weight loss product. Some people will lose weight, but everybody's a little bit different. This is a body contouring and fat loss. And so why does it matter that we keep the fat cell alive and healthy? Because we talked about the fat cell is alive and healthy with this laser system versus something like liposuction or cool sculpting or any of those, a lot of the other products that are out on the market, and we're going to talk about them. But the reason why we want to keep the fat cell alive and healthy is because, I don't know if you knew this, but your fat cells are part of your hormone system, your endocrine system. They help regulate your hormones. They help you with your immunity. They help you with your sugar metabolism. They help you with, making blood cells. They help you with your coagulation of your cells themselves. So having healthy white blood cells and white fat cells are also really important too. So why would we want to kill them? So any questions about that? Dr. Banning can talk to you about that some more and about why it's important. But a lot of people ask about the comparison of this unit to something like liposuction. So liposuction is a very popular thing that people are doing to actually remove fat cells out of the body. We used to think that if you removed fat cells out of the body, that you could never regrow fat cells in the same place. We now know that you can regrow fat cells in the same place, but a lot of times you'll regrow them in other places first that don't look like you. So for example, I'm going to show you this picture here, and I'm going to go back. This is a lady who had liposuction done on her thighs, and she was super happy with the results. And a year later, in the journal Obesity, that they say that a very big percentage of women will actually be unhappy with the results, not because they had rippling or bagging or scarring or nerve damage, which are some of the side effects, but because they regained fat in places that made them look not like themselves. So that's one of the side effects, is redistribution of the fat, as well as potential bagging, rippling, and then also the cost, estimated annual cost, and this was a while ago, for liposuction is around $9,200, which Dr. Banning is not going to be charging anything like that for VZ8 sessions. The other thing that people will ask me about a lot is LED red light therapy for weight loss. And remember we talked about, we do double-blind, placebo-controlled, randomized, multi-site studies whenever we study our lasers. Every time we study the laser, we have to have something that we use as a placebo, which is something that looks just like it, but doesn't work like it. And so we use LED lights for every study that we do. And while we find that they do have some effect, we're not going to say that LEDs don't work at all, but our lasers every time work at least 6 times more effective. So the producers and the owners of the company said if LED lights worked better, we would have used them. But we know that there are placebo. So you'll get some effect. The other thing about red light therapy is they work by a photothermal effect, which means that their FDA clearance for any of the LED red lights that are out there, if they do have an FDA clearance, they have to prove that their unit can heat up as well as a heat lamp can. And if they can, then they get an FDA clearance for it. Not for how effective it is in working to get rid of fat or circumference reduction, but how well they can heat up. So we know that these work in a thermal way. So if you've ever lost water weight before and regained it back really fast, the way that these LED lights work partially in that photothermal effect is by making you sweat, which is something that doesn't have as much of a permanent change. Okay? This is the big one. Does anybody, I don't know if anybody wants to admit it, but we've had some people stand up in the audience and talk about their experiences with cool sculpting. Does anybody want to talk about an experience? Okay. Had one lady get up in the audience and say, I spent $9,800 to do cool sculpting on my abdomen and I lost 1/4 of an inch total. And we said, well, that's what the FDA says that you would lose. So if you look at their actual research, it talks about losing 0.12 inches in 12 weeks. So the way cool sculpting works, it's very, very different from our cold laser. It is cold. It's very cold. This is the result of the cold therapy. And it pulls the fat, it sucks it up into a paddle, and it freezes the fat cells over an hour period. And then your body's going to process those dead fat cells over the next 12 weeks. But what we found is that results, like our results, were 3.91 inches accumulative in a 2-week period of time, and theirs was 0.12 inches in 12 weeks. And this right here is this lady's belly button, right here. So the paddle was on her belly, and it sucked up into that, and the side effect from it. So I've worked with some people who have worked in cool sculpting. They said there's some pretty bad side effects, and this is what we call paradoxical adipose hyperplasia. This person had cool sculpting done right in here, okay? And this was right afterwards. She was pretty happy with it after her bruising went away. But this is what happened above and below the area that she had it. She had hardened fat that grew above and below the area that couldn't get fat. So her contour got much, much worse. This is a smaller version. This is somebody who had paradoxical adipose hyperplasia on the hips from trying to get those little saddlebags removed. And that's hardened fat that needs to get surgically removed. There's does anybody remember the supermodel Linda Evangelista? She's a supermodel in the 90s. She sued cool sculpting for $650 million and the loss of her career after doing it. It's a really interesting story. So cool sculpting, not as good results, really expensive, lots of side effects. This is another thing that's on the market, Emsculpt Neo. I had a provider in the local area and wanted to know how their product compared to ours. They have some type of technology that uses a hot laser. And the thing about if you're going to ever find something out on the market that uses a hot laser, that hot laser can create heat in darker skin tones. So you can only use it on the lighter skin tones because it can actually burn somebody with darker skin tones. Their results were 1.26 inches of fat loss total after 3 months. So again, not even half of what we got. And the biggest one that people always talk about right now are GLP medications. I'm not going to go into the side effects of GLP medications. There's a ton of people that are on them. But what we do know is that we have a lot of providers who have our lasers that are pairing them with their GLPs and doing really, really well. Because inevitably, even if you're losing a lot of weight, sometimes you don't lose it in the places that you want to. And the nice thing about this laser is it can help sculpt you in the areas that you're having some issues with even after large weight loss. So any questions about other competing devices or thoughts or? Yes, so we can use it on a lot of places. We don't put it on the face or on the brain because we don't want to get rid of fat in our brains, really important. And it would be off label to do the chin.